what motorsport is. It's loud. That's why I like it, because I'm loud.
How good are you? Hey, what about that?
Actually, I can actually count to 10 because I got there.
Yes. Yeah, I'm alright. My nuts are a bit squashed. I'm out.
This is what motorsport is. It's loud. That's why I like it, because I'm loud.
How good are you? Hey, what about that?
Actually, I can actually count to 10 because I got there. Yes.
Yeah, I'm alright. My nuts are a bit squashed. I'm out.
This is what motorsport is. It's loud. That's why I like it, because I'm loud.
How good are you? Hey, what about that?
Actually, I can actually count to 10 because I got there. Yes.
Yeah, I'm alright. My nuts are a bit squashed. I'm out.
Hi and welcome back to Blendline TV live here at the Blendline TV offices. Sorry we're a bit late online tonight, a few difficulties behind the scenes, trying to get as much content as we can. Created a big weekend of motorsport. Gary, you were down in Adelaide, but we were up in Sydney with the Australian production cars and a few other things racing there. It was a great weekend.
Yeah, well, like everyone else, I was watching it on Blendline as well through the live stream. So at least we got to do some analysis tonight, I guess. We're going to start off by doing what happened last weekend at Sydney Motorsport Park, and then we're going to look at the Winton Rally, which was the opening round of quite a few rally championships this year, state-based. And then, of course, we're going to do a couple of interviews, and we're also going to talk about the AMRS opener down at Winton this weekend.
I was going to say, we head down this weekend to the AMRS opener at Winton Motor Raceway. Should be a good weekend, a relatively quiet one, I guess you could say, with not a huge, I guess, number of categories on the board. I mean, last year we really packed them in. This year, each category getting a little bit more time, so it's probably better for them. But some great ones to start with: Thundersports, RX8 Cup, and others down there as well. So we'll get into that a bit later. But first off, we'll kick things off by having a bit of a chat about the MRF Tyres Production Car Championship round at Sydney Motorsport Park. I think that was our first thing, wasn't it? Was that?
Yeah, that's where we're starting. We're going to start with an actual
interview with Ian Sharon.
It's going to kick off our program. Ian Sharon is the category administrator for the Australian Production Car Series, the MRF Tyres Australian Production Car Series, with also support from Race Fuels. And going through the whole process of what's happening, and a bit of a bold step. I know they did it at the final round last year, going out on their own, but to start the season off on their own, and they're going to have another standalone event at their next round, which is at the last weekend of June.
So we had to chat to Ian Sharon before the event to talk a bit about their 5-year plan and what's going on with MRF Tyres.
I'm with MRF Tyres Australian Production Car Series Category Manager Ian Sharon. Ian, you signed a new contract with MRF Tyres, a long-term contract. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, look, it's a 5 + 5 year contract, so hopefully 10 years for the future, and it's a great deal for us. It's a full naming right sponsorship, and obviously they also supply the tyres as a control tyre to the category. So really good for the future of Australian production cars, really cements us for the future. We're not going anywhere. You get a major sponsor like this, it's just a fantastic thing. So.
And what are the plans for the future of Australian production cars this year?
So this year we're starting here at Sydney Motorsport Park, and then we're moving to Phillip Island for our second round. After that we'll go to Queensland with our Fight in the Night round up there. And then we're off to Sandown, which is a track that everyone loves, and it's one of those tracks that may not be there forever, so people really want to get there and race there, so that's going to be a fantastic event. And then we finish at Talon Bend, new track to Australia. Again, a lot of our guys have never raced there, so that's going to be a great finale for us.
Yeah, that's going to be quite exciting for everyone.
Absolutely. I have never been there either. I'm really looking forward to it as well.
And what are some of the new cars we can look forward to seeing this year?
Yeah, so we've had some new cars even this weekend. So we're seeing the Mustang for the first time, which was just fantastic. And, I'm hoping to see 4, 5, 6 of those on the grid.
Yeah, it's going quite well, isn't it?
It's doing really well. Straight out of the box, the car's running fantastic. It's a credit to the guys. Mark Cars were actually involved in building that. A credit to Ryan and his team up there, and to Lindsay and Colby that own the car and run the car. They've done a fantastic job, and straight away it's on the front row in the first race. That's fantastic for them. And look, we'd love to see that. We'd hope to see in the future some Camaros out there with that as well. other cars that we've got coming in, there's a Lexus that I seen at a test day not long ago. We're hoping that that will be at Phillip Island this year as well. And there's some more M4s being built. There was another one here this weekend. Had a few issues, so he's not going to be able to run, but there's a couple more being built, M4s as well. So Alfa Romeo out there being built at the moment. So plenty of new cars coming in.
Yeah, we've all enjoyed, I think, this weekend, but we'll look forward to seeing some more of those cars in the future rounds as well.
Yeah, look, it's just going to throw it up and make it more competitive. We've changed our class structures as well, so we've made some of the cars that were probably the top tier in years gone by, we've put them down to A2, so it keeps them competitive with all these new cars coming in. So you know they don't feel like they're coming along and they haven't got something to race for. So, and along with that, we've also introduced a Aussie Muscle class, which is basically your Ford Falcons and your Holden Commodores racing against each other. So it's Aussie Muscle cars, Fords and Holdens. We're giving somewhere for those guys to come and race, which I think is just fantastic. The guys in the Holden today, that's a brand new car they built for Australian Production Car Series this year. And again, they've rolled out, they've actually finished third outright today, which is just an amazing thing for a brand new car, brand new build. And they've come along, committed to the series to take on the Aussie Muscle, and they've done fantastic today. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're all excited to see what's to come. Thanks very much for chatting with us today, Ian.
Thank you very much.
Well, how good's that? We've got possibility of Camaros and Lexus coming into the championship as well, championship series.
Sorry, Gary.
No, you just about blew me out of the room. We'll get over that. But I like the positive nature of where the category's going, you know, with these muscle cars basically coming into it. But, you know, the Mustang was probably the standout on the weekend. New car coming along and being such a jet out of the box. I think that's got some real promise.
Yeah, it should be great. It was a great car to see on the track, and to be able to see people building brand new vehicles to be able to go racing in production cars is something that we really need to see in the country. Of course, the 6 hours probably helped some of that because people want to be able to go and race at Bathurst, but there's some great events as well, like the Phillip Island 6 hour at the end of last year was a good one. That'll be on again this year, and of course they're going to Talon Bend, which is
new circuit for them.
New circuit.
None of them have
First
been
time
there
over there. Yeah, exactly. So that'll be big this year. So I think Sharon and MRF are trying to push the series in the right direction, really grow it, try to get as many people in as they can. And those new Hyundais that they had at the last round as well.
Yeah, pretty strong in that Class C. We're going to get to that a bit later, but I think the first up we're going to have a look at the Ford Mustang.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just one of those things that there's going to be some good stuff coming along, so it's good to see. But yeah, we caught up with the guys who drove the Mustang at Sydney Motorsport Park. Well, Bree did anyway, our reporter down in the pit lane. So let's have a look at that interview that Bree did with the two guys driving the Mustang.
So I'm with Colby and Lindsay, the drivers of the Ford Mustang. Look, you guys built the car especially for Australian production cars. Did the car perform as well as you'd hoped?
It's performing beautifully. The guys at Mark Cars Australia there on the Gold Coast, they built the car for us, and zero complaints. The car builds second to none, and it's been performing really well.
And what was the lead up like to this weekend? Have you had any issues?
The lead up was sort of like pretty intense. We were late getting away, and the whole time we've been chasing our tail. But it was good to get on the track. Yeah.
And how is it feeling out there? Is the track feeling good? Car feeling good?
The car's got it in it. We just got to get a head around the tyres and see how we go with that. So, yeah.
Now, you guys have been driving with and against each other for a while. What's it like driving together?
We've done a bunch of enduros together. Like, we've raced together against each other for about 10 years now. We've done a few enduros, Bathurst 6 hour, 12 hour together. Always had a good time. Had a little bit of success. So, yeah, it's always a good time.
And what are your hopes for this weekend and the season?
Just to complete the race, and we've got 4 1-hour races, so that would be good to do that. And Colby's the talent. We put him in for the qualifying and everything like that, and I'll just do the other half of the job.
Oh, he's talked you up.
He does that. I don't know why.
Well, look, we wish you guys best of luck for the weekend, and hope you can go well.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Yeah, well, we got a little bit of an insight. I think they're not going to let too many secrets out of the barrel yet.
They definitely don't want to let anyone know, do they?
Yeah, and very experienced drivers, both ran Falcons in Queensland saloon cars, and a little bit of national stuff as well. And we know that they've got the the points on the board, I guess you could say, for being competitive. And I know that they've both run in their Falcons in the invitation class in the past, but it's nice to see something that's right up the pointy end of the field.
Something we spoke about off air earlier tonight as well was that car being built by Mark Cars and the people behind those. We've seen those cars running for such a long time at the 12 hour, very reliably. Not that exact Mustang, but the cars they've built.
Yeah.
So you can be pretty confident that something they've put their name to is going to have results. And I mean, first time out, it finished all 4 races at Sydney and finished them all strongly.
Well, and as well, you've got to remember that Mark Cars have been involved in production car racing in the past.
Exactly,
They've had a fairly quick Astra that was out there a few seasons back, so that they know their stuff, and I can only see go strength to strength. And you know what happens when one good Mustang comes out of the shop? Probably some other people might line up to get one as well.
Well, if there's anything like what's going on in supercars, there's going to be a few people trying to get hold of them to be able to get to the front of the field. And it was definitely at the front. Like the surprising thing about it, I think that caught a few people, was that it was right up there with what's seen as, you know, taking a gun to a knife fight at the moment with the BMW and the Mustang's right there ready to battle, you know.
Yeah.
So it's got the ability.
It might end up bludgeoning a few of those other vehicles before the end of the season.
Bat into it. But they were having a good battle, and they also fought with Matt Holt and the guys, the Jack Motorsport team
in the club sport.
There was some good battles there going on between them as well. So it was good to see some new cars coming on. That's one of them. The i30s, and there's a few other cars that are in the pipework we believe.
Yeah, and the racing from the weekend, there's certainly nothing wrong with it. There was plenty of good action going on.
Yeah,
you don't have to have the fastest car out there to not win.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
we found out that, well, the Sheridans particularly found out the hard way. Beric Linton had his problems with his BMW as well, so it was it opens the door up for more things to be going on, potentially for other cars to come into the mix as well, which was what we really like.
That's what we really need to see as well. There was plenty of class battles going on in the Australian Production Car Championship opening round at Sydney Motorsport Park. It was a very hot weekend out in Western Sydney. We've got a few highlights from 4-hour races to show you now. So we'll have a look for that package and try to get on screen to be able to play. And ready to go. So here's some of the highlights of what happened around the circuit.
This is race 1, the very start of the weekend, and you might notice that looking at that, is that
M3, it's a four-wheel drive car behind it and another two-wheel drive car. The iconic Mustang joins the production cars this weekend, and it's the Commodore that gets away. The HSV gets the first 20 metres away, grabs second gear.
Well, just to get it sorted, actually
the Mustang getting away really cleanly, disappeared into its own tyre smoke, sitting on pole on the front row yesterday, and manages to get motivated, just gazumps the field behind. Here comes the number 18 down the inside, ABS going off on board.
This is a Sunday morning race where the Sheridans started well back because they got a two-lap penalty. You might explain a little bit more about what happened to that.
So they came into the pit stop, and unfortunately we stitched them up with that one because they as part of the new rules, Class A1 production cars in Australia have to remove 2 wheels from the car, put them on the ground,
have a look at that, Rangers right up underneath the
Mustang.
Getting pretty frenetic in the last race, always thought it was going to be this way.
Unfortunately for the Sheridan team, they failed to take the rear wheel off the car. It was unbolted.
We're already seeing the WRX doing that, moving the car around on the
nuts, and then just didn't take it off the wheel with the way the tires moved around the car. So that gave them a 2-lap penalty as the mandated penalty for missing your pit stop, and that unfortunately plunged them right down the field. So then in race 3, Grant Sheridan had to start from pretty much the rear of the field, and he drove his way through quite admirably. So
what we're looking at here is Lindsay Kearns driving a Mustang, and we can see that Matt Boylan was in the Subaru. The car he was sharing with Dimitri Agafos to this meeting. So what they did, which is a pretty clever way of doing it, rather than go for a driver change at the pit stop, they opted to run separate drivers, and most of them did that. They learnt that the hard way last year when Bob Pearson won all 4 races at the Sydney event, which was a similar format to what we're seeing here with 4 one-hour races. And by doing that, that meant that there was no time wastage in driver changing. You could actually change your wheel quicker than you could, or lift the wheel off and put it back on quicker than you put a driver in and out of the car. So the Sharons did the same thing. Grant did races 1 and 3 and Ian did 2 and 4. So it was a pretty good way to go, and even Berwick Linton with Tim Lay sharing, they did the same thing as well, shared the drives around. It doesn't matter who's in the car, both drivers get the points for the race.
As they were also aware, the times were a little bit slower on the new tyre this weekend, which is what happens when you have a new development thing underneath the car. A lot of technicians at the circuit just making sure that everyone, well, I guess, was on the same page as they moved forward. So being able to give everybody all of that technical information and making it be able to work together was quite a good thing.
This is Chris Lillis in the club sport, and in this particular race it was Grant driving the Sharon car, and it took him a fair while to get past him. The difference is in the speed down the straight with the turbos kicking in on the BMW makes it just a little bit stronger in a straight line. As you can see, getting out of a corner and in short straights, there's nothing much to differentiate between the two, but down the straight there's certainly a bit of difference as the lag goes away and it comes on boost, and it's just a matter of going. But really commendable effort. Another new car to the series is the Club Sport. They ran a Club Sport in previous years, but it was a VE model. This is a VF, and this particular weekend Crystal has had 2 drives, and Matt Holt was in it for the other 2. This is race 4 you're looking at, I think, because this is a race that they got the penalty for. But I thought Matt drove the... Yeah, this is a little bit of a mix up there. We apologise for that. We'll talk through it anyway. Because that penalty was for the 4th race for the number 64 HSV.
I don't think they got a penalty in any other race that I'm aware of.
No, so I wasn't aware of any other.
That is, but still, the race victories went the way of Grant Sharon. Then in race 1, Berwick Linton was able to grab one in race 2. Tim Lay got back in race 3, and then Matt Holt took home the victory in race 4 in what was a great drive. They really used the pit stop movement to their advantage.
Yeah, the problem
got themselves back to the front of the field.
Yeah, well, with the Sharons with their penalty, and in the final race, of course, Linton with the drive shaft issue before race 1. Then they did a second stop in the last race. They came in before the designated compulsory pit window was open. There was a safety car out. We had one of the Hyundais have an engine drama down at turn 2, to put it mildly.
Yep.
And there is one of the Hyundais. I don't think that was the one that had the dramas, number 15, which is the one. Yeah. Caleb Eckhart was a very strong competitor in race 2. Was second across the line, but he also had a 5-second penalty had to add to it. So for the older model Sharon car, the 135i, did a pretty good job, I thought. And there's Brent Edwards' car there, is it? That one just ahead.
The car, that's the Jarvis car.
Beg your pardon, yeah, they used
BMW.
it for this
They
one.
had dramas in race 1, and had to pull the car out of the race. So they pulled it out, tuned it up, brought it back for race 2, 3, 4, and had a pretty reasonable result throughout the rest of the weekend.
Because Jarvis was double dutying on the weekend as well, running in TA2 muscle cars, which we'll get to a little bit later.
It was a good time for them to be able to have a run. But yeah, these Hyundais, and then about here I think is where... Oh no, it was at turn 2, definitely, that one of them popped. And he just popped the motor out of that one. So they're not exactly sure what the problem is with it, but it had an issue.
Yeah, as we said, we if you just come into it, we were looking at highlights from round 1 of the MRF tyres.
This is not highlights.
Yeah, I think this is a full race we're looking at.
Yeah.
So we might
go back to Gary.
Have to stop this for the moment and get the highlights package up. Apologise for that. We were running a bit short of time tonight, and unfortunately because of that, we just threw stuff together pretty nilly-nally, and that's the result of it. But just to go again through the results, Grant Sharon won the opening race ahead of Berwick Linton, and Chris Lewis was third. In the second race, it was Berwick Linton ahead of Ian Sharon, and Matt Holt was in first spot. So it's the same three cars. Here we go. Now we're getting the proper highlights package. This is the proper highlights package.
Yes. With race 1 first in the order, as it was meant to be. Unfortunately, we ended up with race 4 being played in full, which I don't think anybody wanted to sit and watch in full at the moment. If you want to watch the full races, they are on the Blendline TV YouTube channel. You can go check them out there. We got 2 whole days of live streaming with plenty of racing. That BMW unfortunately would not make it very far through the day. Team Grimmerco, Brock Mitchell getting to race 1. That was a brand new car out there. Those guys planning to run the 6 hour, and unfortunately for them,
we'll get to that a little bit later. But that's the ex-Morecambe car, one of 2 cars that started life together, running in the 12 hour. The other car is the Peter O'Donnell car now, which Gary Holt debuted and won a couple of 6 hours in it. No, 12 hours I should say. And then it's come back and run 6 hours and all sorts of things. Here was this good battle between the BMW 130i of Jake White and one of the Hyundai i30Ns, which on debut did a pretty reasonable job, I thought.
Wasn't too bad at all. It had a good run, and the team cars were running fairly well. They were putting in a lot of effort across the weekend, and the Free Spirit Tattoo car in the back there, they were pushing hard as well, sliding it out. You can see they're flicking the rear out, and then just watch this drift at the final corner. Not often you get to see a Class C car drifting around like that. It was great fun to watch. We thoroughly enjoyed it on the day.
He was a bit of a shame. Jordan Cox actually got a Parc Ferme, or the car did, got a Parc Ferme penalty after qualifying, had to start rear of the grid, got himself up to 2nd spot on the road, which was a phenomenal drive in the 135i, and fortunately fuel drama has put them off the road with only about 7 minutes of that first hour left to go. And of course there is our winner, Grant Sharon, across the line, just in front of Berwick Linton, and as we said before, Chris Lillis was the 3rd car across the line. Here's the start of the 2nd race now, and look, he made a really good start out of this. Actually, this is starting to look like race 4. But we can see that
it's definitely race 2.
Yeah.
There's cars there that didn't make it to race 4, so I can tell you.
But what I was alluding to was the fact that the HSV made a blistering start, which it did in the last race as well. And here we are, bit of
Commodore Mustang,
Ford v GM muscle at it, with an Evo in behind it, and they're coming down here through turn 5 and out of there, and you can see it's pretty tight at the front. And then we've seen this happen, unfortunately, and that was a shame. That was a huge hit.
Yeah, big moment for the Bimco. I don't think that car is going to be back from what we've heard. You can just see very slowly, they're both on the edge of the track.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a clip.
Yep. And
that was a huge shunt for the BMW. Evo escaped, well, it was out for the weekend, but unfortunately, I don't think it's a write-off, but I can't say the same for the BMW. Be a miracle for him to get that one back.
Scott Cameron behind the wheel of the BMW there, who was pretty upset. Jason Miller in the Evo, those guys just meeting in the middle, and one of those things, I think, a racing incident restarted the race after 20 minutes under safety car. They cleaned it up relatively quickly. Of course, we were very, very what would you say, late on the schedule at this point. So we ended up with having to have a half-hour shootout towards the end of the race, which put us after 6 p.m, and so that was pretty interesting to see as the sun went down. Not easy for the drivers around the back section of the circuit. The BMW brigade, though, at the front, they still had to do their mandatory pit stops. Safety car period meant that the window was closed, so that meant that these 2 BMWs, it was interesting to see what they were going to do. Berwick Linton came in and they made the change as was required, and then Sharon came in a lap later to make the change for him as well, taking the rear wheel, or both 2 wheels off it, and that left Berwick Linton in the lead with quite a handy lead at this point in time. So a lot of work for Sharon to do to be able to close that gap down at the front.
Of course, the main way you can tell these cars apart from the colour, is the fact that one's a 2-door and one's a 4-door, and one's got a wing on it
down the side,
and the huge Sharon down the side.
The huge Sharon down the side probably helps as well.
The M3 is the 4-door version. Runs about 17 kilowatts more in power, and it has to have a little bit more weight in it, due obviously to having 2 extra doors.
Class C battle was on here, and you can see out in front it was the Usil Saltieri car with Ian Saltieri behind the wheel, but the Next Gen Racing guys were up against the Free Spirit Racing and the MWM Golf R, which unfortunately went out of the race, and ultimately Berwick Linton taking the victory in race 2 before we got to Sunday morning in race 3, which saw the BMWs leave the line for the first time together at the front.
Had to happen eventually, didn't it? Yep, and there's of course the
Jordan Cox again.
Jordan Cox up to 4th, ahead of the Mustang. The HSV just in front of those two. It's interesting when you look at the battle in Class C, the 2 Hyundais up basically against the 2 Golfs, and of course we couldn't really discount the BMW 130i, which was all in mix, and the lap times weren't that different.
No.
They were all fairly close in their lap time. So the fastest lap in race 2 for a Class C car was a 51.79, and the fastest of the Hyundais was a 52.2. So half a second there, but in race conditions you never quite get what you need out of them. And there's the Mustang actually putting a passing move on the HSV. Matt Holt raced it in race 2, but in race 3 it was Chris Lillis at the wheel, Lindsay Kearns in the Mustang. About the only bad moment in the whole race was this one, where car 87 of James Goldberg just had a moment off the track there, coming out of turn 7, going down to turn 8.
And this would ultimately be the moment they lost Sharon the race as they came into the pit stop, unfortunately not fully completing the pit stop as prescribed, with both wheels coming off and touching the ground, the rear wheel never getting taken off the car. Just a miscommunication between the guys undertaking the pit stop there, and that gave them a 2-lap penalty, putting Ian Sharon right back down to 9th place in the race. Unfortunately as well, another one to strike with the penalty was the Cox Turner BMW 135i. They missed the pit stop window by all of 5 seconds. Came in across the line as the pit stop window closed.
Oh, that's a shame,
so,
isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunate for them. And then that led to this moment for Turner when he was behind the wheel of the Fierce Racing BMW, coming out of the hairpin, gets on the rears and just rotates the car and could not pull it up before the wall. So that put them out of the weekend. A pretty disastrous 3rd race for them after showing so much promise. A car they'd only just got ready on Thursday night.
Yeah, unfortunately, I guess that damage not nearly as savage as what happened the day before, which is always a positive. And there's
Ian Sharon coming to victory, but not.
First across the line, but obviously relegated as a result. So
unfortunate result for them, but still they would be able to fight back in the final race of the weekend.
Yeah, this
is a very diminished field for this one, but that was the war of attrition that it was, with 4 1-hour races across 2 days.
Yeah, you probably don't see it from this angle, but the HSV actually got the best start, but it was Tim Lay who eventually headed out in front, and of course Matt Holt driving the HSV on this occasion obviously nailed the start perfectly. Colby Cowan in the Mustang, and followed by Dimitri Aragafos in the Subaru. So they, as we said before, they jumbled up the drivers just to confuse us as well as everyone else. But it's a good way to run an event that means you don't have to worry about those pit stop driver changes.
Though some of them did. Occasionally in races, people decided to do the driver change anyway. It depended on what was happening. In this race, we had a great battle between the Mustang and the VF Club Sport R8, Matthew Holt and Colby Cohen going at it. And then this thing let go, the number 15 Next Gen Racing Alfie Sinisi Hyundai i30. At the time, the team was not aware of what had caused the motor to dump its oil out the front. So I would say there's some sort of cooler failure perhaps.
Or perhaps it was a hole in the block.
Or a hole in the block. I was hoping for better news, to be honest.
Let's just say that there was no fluid left in it.
No, and then we had, this was a very interesting moment as well, as Tim Lay came into the pit lane, changed the left side tyres completely so that they were ready for their mandatory pit stop to change the right hand side tyres, effectively putting 4 fresh tyres on while they were in the pit stop window. Of course, it dropped them to the rear, didn't count as one of their pit stops for the race, but ultimately you can see they used it to their advantage as the Sherrans came in to complete their mandatory pit stop. The Sherrans never changed tyres throughout the race meeting in the race.
Isn't that interesting? Because last year they went through right fronts on a fairly regular basis.
That's it, yeah.
And
so
this
lap
year
times a little bit slower, but they got through the race without any sort of dramas.
I dare say they've probably set the car up a little bit differently as well, but they certainly learnt their lesson from last year about making those tyres work and last throughout a race, which is a commendable effort considering they're on a new tyre, a new brand as well.
And that's something that's going to take a bit of learning, but it was this team that managed to work out the strategy to perfection for this race. They had a 20-second lead coming into the final stages, a 5-second penalty hanging over their heads as they Matt Holt had rolled at the very beginning of the race. Well, not rolled the car, of course, because you can see it there on screen, but rolled out of his starting box at the very heart of the race.
There's Chris Earlis running up onto
the team was incredibly happy.
Yeah, 9-second victory for those guys. Adding all that in, pretty good effort.
Try to communicate to the control room and get caught on screen.
Welcome to amateur hour.
That's it. Get caught on screen again as I try to communicate with the control room.
Yeah.
But that was a great victory, the first one for a Commodore in a long time in the Australian production car ranks. So it was really good to see.
Go back to Scott Loadsman winning races in production cars. How many years ago was that?
I have no idea.
Anyway,
can't count off the top of my head. But it was good to see Matt Holt to be the man to do it, especially alongside Lillis and the Jack Sport team who have run Commodores for such a long time. To be able to see them get up, they were ecstatic with their efforts there at Sydney Motorsport Park. So we'll turn our attention to the TA2 Muscle Car Series. Unfortunately, we don't have any video content to play for this one. We were just pushed too much for time today with so much going on. But Aaron Seaton took 3 victories out of 4 races in that one, pushed all the way by George Medeki, and eventually a spin in race 4 saw Seaton drop to 3rd place after he lost it on the exit of turn 4.
Well, just going back at the sheer weight of numbers there, well over 20 cars running for their first round for 2019, and the fact that we got Mediki's brand new Mustang for George, while Andrew ran the tried and proven through one race meeting of the Dodge Challenger for Andrew. And Dodge Challenger finishing 4th for young Nathan Hearn, who raced in the Australian Formula Ford Series as well as the New South Wales Series. He did a commendable job in his first time in something that's got a roof on it and lots of metal around him. He was in 4th spot in the first race. Ash Jarvis, the defending title holder, came home in 5th spot. And then we've had a brace of Mustangs, Russell Wright, Drew Ridge and Hugh McAllister. Now Hugh McAllister, part of a 2-car team that's running it this year. The second car, Matt McElveen, also running in the car that Ian McAllister ran last year and raced at the Bathurst combined sedan. So good results there. Murray Kent in the Camaro out of Queensland Classic Touring Cars, and of course McElveen got over in 10th, Simon Taverner 11th, Darren Barry in 12th. And then, of course, that was a pretty straightforward one. We went into race 2 later in the day, and you can look at the same results for Seaton and George Medeki. Andrew was up to 3rd in the early part, but eventually succumbed to the pressure applied by Nathan Hearn, and Hearn got to the line just ahead of him. Jarvis, Wright and McAllister all finished pretty well line astern in that one. It was a very tight fight. Kent got ahead of Ridge and McElveen and Taberner again in 11th spot. Some of the guys we expect to see at the front now are really starting to find the competition's really heated up. Anthony Tengate, who was one of the strong contenders in not only last year but the year before, found himself back in 12th position. Greg Willis returning, first time he brought a TA2 down to Sydney, had a reasonable run. Darren Berry, Mark Crutcher, of course. George Elliott, another 2-car team we should talk about as well, running with someone.
Somebody.
He had dramas early, so he went out of race 2
early in the day.
Then we go to race 3, and this was very tight. There was hardly anything between Seaton and George Medeki in this one. They went very close to the line. Jarvis managed to work his way up past Medeki to take in third position. Unfortunately, Hearn had an overheating issue and had to pull out of the race. And then, of course, the next one after them were Andrew Medicki, Hugh McAllister, Russell Wright, Murray Kent. Just Keith getting a little bit closer to the front, got a bit of work to do. When I said Hearn pulled out, he just had to slow because of the heating
got
issue.
Out of the battle and made sure
George Elliott got up to 11th, Simon Taberner in 10th, so Simon's working his way into it, former Australian saloon car champion, so he's finding his way towards the front end of the field. And in the last, of course, a rare error from Aaron Seaton saw him finish in third. He had a lose down at turn 4. That allowed George Medicki and Ash Jarvis to get by. Wright in 5th spot, Medicki in Andrew in 6th, McAllister, McEldrin, Kent, Ridge, 10 Kate, Sean Richardson is a new name too that's joined the category, and he finished ahead of Taberner and Berry and George and Elliott and Mark Crutcher. So that was it for TA2.
Some spectacular racing from those guys, and they head to Morgan Park for their next round on the April 5 to 7, which will be part of the AMRS as well. So
yeah, they've got a mixed bag of they've got a mixed bags of where they run.
Yeah, exactly.
They're doing some racer events. They're doing AMRS events, and I don't think they're doing cams this year though.
But that's another story.
Yeah.
Production Sports Cars, moving on to them. They had 2-hour endurance races across the weekend, both in the afternoon. Sunday to complete the racing action at Sydney Motorsport Park. Saturday's race, a pretty straightforward affair. Unfortunately for us, the news to report, Peter Boylan having a pretty large shunt at turn 2. Doing a bit of damage to himself, but he's back in the office. We've seen him over the last couple of days. He's been wandering in and out to have a bit of a chat and enjoyed watching his footage, so shout out to Peter if he's watching.
Yeah, looking for a sympathy vote.
He likes a bit of sympathy vote, but he can get it. So,
actually, that threw a bit of a spanner in the works, because that happened before the first of the compulsory before the compulsory pit window opened.
Sure.
So that meant that it threw some peculiarities. Nick Kelly started the race in an Audi. Actually, Audi's finished 1, 2, 3 in this event, and when Bart Moyer took over, it looked like they might be the winners. But Gary Higgin was in another Audi, and Daniel Gaunt took that one over, and we've seen what he's done in production sports last year. Came through to take a win. Vince Moretti was in 3rd spot. And somehow Aaron Tebb took Steve Voigt's car through a 360 at the top of the straight.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive, that one.
And still salvaged 4th.
He also drove it down the grass at one point.
Well, that was because he was recovering from that.
Yeah.
It was a full 360, and then we got Sergio Perez and his co-driver, Lua coming home in position 5. The first of the Class A cars, the top 5 were of course GT cars, was Brad Schumacher, and we know from the Challenge Bathurst that Brad had a pretty nasty accident up there in a Lotus.
It was good and surprising to see him wandering around so, comfortable and happy. I didn't think we'd see him back for a while, but great to see him out there and to pick up 2 Class A victories. I'm pretty sure he won
Nathan Halstead, he
was a great effort.
Nathan Halstead was second in that. Anthony Skinner came home in 8th position, and of course we got Dylan DeSacco and Peter Lucas in the Class B Porsche, which is the one that's got the cigarette-looking livery on it, which we can't mention. But
that's it.
It's a really good car. Unfortunately, in race 2, it had a engine meltdown.
Massive failure, yeah. Unfortunately for them. Race 2 was a pretty good race, though, in the end. The Twilight almost effectively race. Sunday afternoon to finish us out for the weekend of racing. And again, we saw Bart Moore and Dan Gaunt go at it,
and again Dan Gaunt got the when Matt Supers got up to 3rd. You notice that the KFC cars have got a different livery to white with white with the red, bit more traditional KFC, I guess, since they are sponsored by KFC. Voigt
Gary's after something here. He's complained about eating too much chicken the last couple of days. Now we know why. Voigt saw them on the street.
Can I talk about this? Anthony Skinner moved up a position. He finished ahead of Brad Schumacher and Nathan Halstead again. The Richard Backus, Jamie Miller. Now that's an interesting story. They actually ran 2 events over the weekend. They were 2 categories.
One and a half.
1.5 is probably a better way of putting it. They were sharing their Evo, which we've seen have that crash earlier, and they also backed up and raced a GT3 Cup car in amongst the Prodsports, and finished 8th in the second race, so that was a pretty good effort. 10th in that race, Craig and Adam Burgess in the Janetta. Didn't get to see much of them in the first race, but certainly I think they had some sort of failure in the first. I did see them slow right up at one stage.
Yeah, they pulled back into pit lane, and Paul Marcel's Allure in the Porsche Cup 991. Those guys had a delaminating tyre.
Wow.
Didn't they go off at 3 times before the team believed in that there was a tyre problem? So,
and Vince Moretti had a fairly major off as well. Didn't hit anything, fortunately, but
he ended up buried in the gravel trap for the last 10 minutes of the race. They didn't want to put him out for that one. So
woke him up if he was falling asleep, wouldn't he?
And Richard Gartner had a really troublesome run in that race as well. The car was in there.
I like the way they kept saying, no, we didn't have any dramas, and then they had dramas.
There's no drama with the car as they pushed it in the garage for the second time to try to fix something that wasn't a drama with the car. So that was an interesting one.
We're not having a shot at Gary Manel or anything like that, are we?
We'd never do that. So last but not least, Radical Australia Cup, and it was pretty much the Peter Padden Radical Australia Cup. As
it's been quite a bit over a period of time. Yeah, Patton won the first race ahead of Chris Perini, with Simon Haggerty coming in third. The winners of the first round, although they didn't win the race, were Mitch and Brad Nilsson. They finished 4th in that opener, ahead of Anthony Haggerty and 2 of the Medlands in position 6. Of course, those races are 50 minutes, and they have a compulsory pit stop, but it's all worked out on where you're seated and about how much time you actually spend in the pits. Unlike other rounds, though, they had an extra race, and it was a sprint race on Sunday morning, and it was probably the best race of the category for the weekend, and that was won by Mitch Nelson, who came through and passed Peter Padden, which surprised me a bit.
Yeah,
I didn't expect to see that coming. Padden was in second, Haggerty third, Peter Clare got past Chris Perini as well. Perini was actually in a fight for the lead, but he had a bit of a moment and dropped him down the order somewhat. So yeah, good to see Mitch Nielsen get a victory there. He's only a young fella and racing with his dad. And then of course we came to the second of the 50-minute races, and Peter Padden basically blitzed. Oh, he didn't actually blitz him, but he was in front by a fair bit for a while. Perini sort of got a bit close to the end, and the Nielsens were third, Claire 4th. Anthony Haggerty, Simon Haggerty and Rowan Ross made up our top 7.
Good weekend of racing for the Radical Australia Cup. They now go to Sydney Motorsport Park again at the middle of May.
So they should know their way around there by now.
So hopefully after that many races they will be able to get through. I think the most comical part of the weekend that I saw for Radical Australia Cup was actually during one of the pit stops. I can't remember who it was for, but they came into the pits and they offered him a bottle. Thumbs up to the crew, so they took the bottle away thinking he was saying thumbs up, all right, and then he went to put his hand up to grab the bottle and there's no bottle there, so you got to try it again. What's going on? Where's the bottle? Bit of interesting communication. It happens to everybody, see? Yeah, sometimes the communication just doesn't go too well. Anyway, we're going to move along to the Victorian Rally Championship, which had its opening round at Mitta on the weekend. A great time down there. On the southern, I guess, what would you call it, end of the Southern Highlands, just across the border into Victoria.
Well, you call that Victoria. Highlands, the Southern Highlands is New South Wales.
I'm just saying, you get down
what
south.
It was the opening round.
I'm trying to explain in comparison whereabouts it is. Thanks, Gary. Thanks for the
help. Border Oils and Batteries Mitta Mountain Rally, based out of Mitta.
Where was that?
Mitta.
Oh, okay.
It was the first round of the MTA New South Wales Rally Championship, also the Cairns Victorian Rally Championship and the East Coast Classic Rally Series. So there's 3 in 1 there, so good value, 50 odd cars competing, and it was Glenn Raymond and Kate Catford.
Do you know how good the value is for going and watching that? Guess how much entry fees are to go watch?
Oh, watch? No
tickets.
No, there's no tickets.
No fee?
I did...
go walk in the forest, no fee, good price.
Yeah, I did the Kyogle race last year, rally last year, and that was around the New South Wales and Queensland series, and you could just go where you liked, and good crowds.
Well, don't stand on the course. That would be. Well, they won't be happy with you with that one.
That's
always stay behind the bunting.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing you do.
Oh, here we go.
There's a camera. Actually, there's one point there where there's a cameraman down on the outside of one of the corners, and one of the guy, the Irish
I don't
guy,
know if I want this story to continue. We're honest.
I'm just trying to. Ian Young, is it? The Irish guy in the Ford Escort went off track and went the other side of him, a bit like what we've seen the other week.
For Neil. Yeah, Neil films rally as well, so he knows what it's all about. But anyway, we should roll the package of what we've got from Vic Rally to be able to have a quick chat about how the weekend went at Mitta. So here's the package.
Yeah, well, while we're looking at it, we'll tell you what happened. Well, as I said, Glenn Roman and Kate Catford won the event. Now, Kate Catford's been in the navigator seat for, you name it, she's been in it basically. Tarmac Rally Sprints, Target Tasmania, many a rally. She must take brave pills or something, I don't know how they do it. But they won the rally in an Evo 9. It was at home turf meeting for them because they're in the Victorian Championship. Actually, I think they're registered for New South Wales as well. Tristan Kent and Robert Males, another Evo, nominated for both championships, and they came home in second place. And Richard Smitten and Jim Gleeson rounded out the top three. So it was an Evo fest, you might say, taking the top three spots. Tony Sullins and Kaylin Newell were fourth. First of New South Wales cars in the two-wheel drive division in a Citroen DS3, which has been promising good things late last year, finally came through for them. Andrew Penny and Reece Llewellyn in the Subaru Ivan Register and Paul Hume, they were finished in the top six. So as you can see, there's fairly dry and very, very warm there, and you can see one of the Escorts that are running in the Classic Series going through there, and would have been very dusty wherever you stood.
It was quite a dusty weekend, but great to see the Victorian Rally Championship proudly brought to you by Hino Trucks Geelong this year. We've got plenty more highlights coming on Blendline TV, so keep an eye out for plenty of little videos and clips and things like that. The next round is the Ada River Rally on March 31st, so that'll be a great one. We've also got on March 30th the Rockstar Automotive Rally, Mini Dulla Rally, which will be getting some coverage here on Blendline as well. So a bit of rally content coming your way this season. We've got a lot happening, which is going to be great to see. So keep an eye out for the Vic Rally Championship stuff as we move ahead to this weekend, which is the AMRS opening round. We had a fantastic season in 2018 for the inaugural season of the AMRS, and now we head back down to Winton for round one this weekend, featuring RX8 Cup, Thunder Sports, Formula 3 Australia, Combined Sedans, and then a couple of other groups coming on board as well.
I think you've got regularity or something there. So
yeah,
it's a more of a low-key start than we had last year. I think we had about 7 or 8 categories last year. You had to actually do a bit of work for a change, and this one you can put your feet up.
That's it. We'll have a great time,
but
still plenty of hard work.
We should talk about the 3 categories that we do have. That we'll
kick things off with Thunder Sports, yeah?
Yeah, we got Thunder Sports, which is a new category for 2019. It's basically an extension of Extreme TT, and it includes any nominated sports sedan you want to take along. You can take a drift car there. There's Corey Gillett's Nissan.
LS-powered Nissan.
Yep. But you can also take a top-line sports sedan there. Well, when I say top-line, you know, one of the ones that runs in the series. Probably none of them will go there. Drift cars are eligible, even time attack cars, but they have to trim in that front wing that obviously too far wider than the bodywork. It can go 100mm, I think, or something like that, past the bodywork, and that's about it all over. But these are the sort of cars we're going to see there. There's Kevin Stoopman's Evo.
I was going to say, they've got a capacity field down there this weekend as well, I believe. It's 25 to 30 cars, which will be on grid, so that's looking pretty good. And I know behind the scenes, John Reveski's done a lot of work to get Thunder Sports up and going.
Yes,
really got something. They're supported this weekend as well by Rook Finance, so great for them to come on board and be able to support the series.
What he's done really well is got a lot of little platform sponsors. It's an interesting way that he's doing it, so they all get... to contribute something to it and get the benefit thereof.
Yeah, and it's great to see, and I tell you what, people are starting to get around that category, and hopefully it gives a home to a few cars that maybe don't have as much of a home elsewhere to be able to race with each other. More of a floor plan, I guess, build a big motor into it and go racing.
You can run a space frame car, there's no problem with that. The thing is that what it does, if you've got a forced induction car, you're allowed a bigger than 6 litre multiplication factor, so you can basically do a 4 litre car turbo and still be within the rules, but you carry a weight limit, a weight penalty because of that.
Yeah. So it should be good to see, and make sure to keep an eye out here on Blendline TV. We'll have television highlights of Thunder Sports in the weeks following. I think we've got it scheduled for March 18th or somewhere around there, but keep an eye out on the website for more details. We've also got RX8 Cup kicking off. Rick Shaw has put in a monumental effort in the off-season, along with his committee, to be able to get even more cars out there. This was one of the, I guess, surprise packages of 2018. I don't think nobody expected it to go anywhere, but nobody expected it to grow as largely as it has with how much effort these guys have put in. And now they're starting this year with over 20 cars.
Yeah.
Incredible
effort. It's a 75% increase on the start of last season.
It's incredible, isn't it? So it's right up there to be able to see, and you can see there some of the cars that will be coming out. New cars built in the off-season. Again, a spec formula, so you run a Mazda RX-8, you get the parts from specific suppliers and be able to bring them into the car and build it up. But I tell you what, it promotes some good close racing, and if you want to see some good stuff, go and check out RX8 Cup on Blendline, because we've seen some great races throughout the season.
Yeah, it was certainly last round it had everything. It was lead changes, and
it'll be interesting to see if Prosser and Rick Shaw go at each other again, because they were so close at the end of last year.
People swapping cars. There's new cars coming into it as well. So Prosser is back, the Kiwi.
Yep.
But he's not in the car that he raced last year.
No.
Stepping up. Stephen McLean's car from last year.
No, I think take one of the quick ones.
Yeah. He's just fast enough.
I know, right? But got to get back out there. And then we've got Australian Formula 3 making a comeback with the AMRS. They'll be on all the AMRS rounds this year, I believe, all bar one, I think, actually.
Yeah, they've got a standalone somewhere else.
Later
in the year. Fastest cars in the country, no doubt about that.
Yep.
And John Magro coming back to run the Series 2, which is going to be fantastic. Signed a deal with Artec Motorsport to run one of their cars throughout the year, and you can bet that Gilmore Racing will probably have a car out there. So they'll be our 2 major protagonists, no doubt, throughout the course of the season, 5 rounds or thereabouts.
And if you check out Formula 3 Australia on Facebook, they've been doing a lot of announcements of who's going to be racing what at the weekend. But make sure to keep an eye out here on Blendline, because we'll have heaps of social media content across the weekend, at least we'll try to anyway, and plenty of video content coming your way soon. Now, Gary and I also just wrapped commentary on the New South Wales Sportsman's TV show for next Monday night. So 8:30 PM Monday, channel 173 on Foxtel, Aurora channel. We will be bringing you Sportsman's. That'll be followed by HQ Holden Racing at 9 PM from New South Wales as well, with Wakefield Park, which we saw last week on this show, some highlights of. And then we've also got the New South Wales Production Touring Car Championship highlights coming your way very shortly as well online. So make sure to keep your eyes peeled on Blendline TV for all of that action. But that pretty much wraps up what we've got for you in store tonight. I think there's nothing further we wanted to cover.
I think we got there. We'll promise you a longer show next week.
That's
we'll have some car features and stuff which you'll film on the
weekend.
weekend.
We've got a few things to film, and we're going to have a chat to a few drivers. So got some cool stuff coming up. So make sure to tune in next week, Wednesday night, 8 PM. Monday night, 8:30 on Foxtel 173 for